and that is the white working class, not the non-white working class. Okay, that's the attitude of the white working class.
Deregulation.
They believe
still believing that government has a role in punishing bad actors in the private sector.
Okay, yeah, sure, but the issue is it's essentially a redistribution. Like the notion of redistribution sort of puts you into a completely different camp, and that's ultimately what is implied by anti-capitalism. The white working class in America is strongly capitalist. And so they're not entirely laissez-faire, but they are capitalist.
Aren't they protectionists? I mean, like you were talking about also,
protectionist.
Kyle,
yeah, protectionism is consistent with capitalism. Ultimately, protectionism can be consistent with capitalism, and that's why I'm way more protectionist than Donald Trump. Yes, absolutely. A free market within a country is one thing, but allowing other countries to subsidize their industries and then outcompete ours is a different story entirely.
Is that how you see it, KMG? Like, because you're arguing more so for protectionism, but then Kyle is saying that he's a protectionist. Is that what you're hearing as well, KMG? Or
he uses words that generally do not correspond to their accepted meaning.
Okay.
Look, I'll give Kyle I'll give him a little history lesson. Okay. The right, the conservatives, always viewed capitalism with deep suspicion. Manchester liberalism, the ideology of the Industrial Revolution, not right-wing, not conservative. This is history. You don't know it. And I don't know that I want to continue arguing with someone who is so ignorant of the bases of what he claims to support.
I mean, you fail to understand the very basic dynamics of politics in this country, where you have a white working class that is in favor of free enterprise, that is in favor of deregulation and low taxes.
Wrong.
That's what the white working class is in favor of. How would you know business this? People. That's why they're always talking about small business people in their ads. Why are they always talking about small business people?
You don't even know the difference between the working class and the bourgeoisie.
You don't know. You don't recognize that your position is absolutely untenable in modern politics.
You just admitted
you can't be anti-capitalist and not leftist. I didn't admit anything. Stop telling me what I admit and stop telling me what I think.
But hold on.
What I admit and stop telling me what I think.
There's such a huge difference between small business and corporate elite. You talk about elite; these are not small business owners.
But they depend on capitalism.
The working class. They depend on capitalism. Has an idea like the working class is the electrician that would like to have low regulation so he can quickly start up an LLC to work for himself. Okay, right. That is the idea of free enterprise. That is not capitalism in 2019
That is capitalism.
In America.
That is absolutely capitalism.
It's not where we're at.
It doesn't matter.
It's like 18th century capitalism. We have corporatism. We have corporatism. And the Republican Party right now represents multinational corporatism.
Represents the white working class.
Let Brundle finish. Let Brundlefly finish.
Limited inflow of immigrants. Okay, destroying the working class. You know,
Trump is protectionism, and capitalism is the answer. You have protectionism to protect the interests of the working class. You don't have welfareism. You don't have this redistributionism. You have low taxes. You have low regulations. You have protectionism. That's Trumpism. And it's very effective, and it has an elite constituency.
Why don't you go to a Rust Belt working class bar where, there aren't jobs anymore because the manufacturing was sent to Asia? And why don't you go up to one of these fellows in a trucker cap and ask him what he thinks about capitalism? No, better yet, ask him to tell you how much he loves capitalism.
Ask him what he thinks of socialism.
You are so out of touch.
Ask him what he thinks of right-wing socialism.
And so you are saying that if one does not take the turbo-capitalist position, that makes one a socialist. Again,
I'm saying that. Are you in favor of redistribution or not? You talk about a wealth tax. Like, how do you justify that wealth tax? Is that in favor of redistribution or not?
Kyle, isn't protectionism redistribution?
You
talked about a wealth tax earlier. Like, this was days ago. You were talking about how you wanted Ocasio-Cortez to suggest a wealth tax. How you thought that would be a positive step.
No, I was making a joke, actually.
Okay.
I was repeating a joke that Ann Coulter made.
It does follow from your anti-capitalism.
The Pew Research has done extensive survey on this. Socially left and economically right voters are 3% of the electorate. Socially liberal, economically conservative, 3% of the electorate. That is the libertarian position. It is a loser position. it is 3%. There's more people that 10 times as many people.
Ask about right-wing socialism.
10 times as many people. What redistribution? Any government that collects taxes is to a certain extent redistributionist. Again, give your head a shake.
The military is to an extent redistributionist, but that's not the kind of redistribution that I'm talking about. You're talking about a rise in anti-capitalist sentiment, which broadly correlates with the idea of wealth taxes, the idea of a large-scale redistribution, justified by the supposed oppressive nature of the capitalists.
What world do you
when you
think
talk about
you
the
live
oppressive
in?
nature of the capitalists,
what world do you think you live in? No, you do not live in the world that I live in. I live in a world where
you live in
people
crazy
use
town,
words
dude.
that
You live in
mean,
crazy town. Why do the people taking your position universally? Why do the people taking your position universally have these sorts of failings in their personal life, have these sorts of nothing to lose attitudes? I mean, why? And this burning resentment for the elites of their society.
But Kyle, the thing is the resentment grows because more and more people fall into what you would categorize as the loser bucket as wealth becomes disproportionately concentrated in the hands of the ultra 1%, mostly represented by people loosely related to yourself, who give no shits about native populations, who only care about their ability to travel to and from other, capitals of the world and make tons and tons of money and wage wars on countries like Venezuela or Iran that don't want to participate in international banking schemes. They must
mostly
be
white Gentiles.
No, they're not
mostly white Gentile males.
Again, your obsession with race.
Mostly
this
white
crazy
Gentile
obsession with race that I'm supposed to venerate evil men because they're white
every single second. You sound more like a leftist every single second.
Straight out the culture critique.
Yeah. Okay.
So wait, Kyle, isn't capitalism the notion of itself a Marxist idea? Actually, I thought I'd heard that before. You heard that?
No, not really.
That the notion of capitalism didn't exist until Engel and whatnot.
Karl Marx was a great admirer of capitalism because he saw that it would bring about the total destruction of tradition.
Right.
Capitalism has an alienating effect. The early work of Marx is quite illuminating in this respect. That to the extent that the capitalists gain power and control policy, people become alienated from their families, from their communities, from their country, from God. Karl Marx understood this, and that is why he cheered capitalism.
And ironically, he was related to the Rothschilds. Ain't that something?
Capitalism is the gift of the West to the world. If you decry capitalism, you decry the West. Yep. You're historically illiterate, dude.
Beep bop boop bop. Wait. So I mean, obviously, Kyle? Don't you recognize that these things are tools? I think that's what many of us here are sort of seeing, is that capitalism is a tool, and you almost seem to be saying it yourself too, because you're saying protectionism is good, but then you're like, so then what would be the problem with some? I understand what the
problem with right-wing. I'll tell you exactly what the problem is with right-wing redistributionism. It's because if you embrace anti-capitalism and you embrace redistributionism, then you have to recognize something that says that the biggest victims are the third worlders, are the racial minorities in the West, and you have to embrace your moral responsibility to redistribute to them, unless you take the step of saying that one's moral worth is completely connected to one's racial membership in some sort of ethno-nationalist group, right? That's actually the only logical way to square that circle. And that's a position that's basically only taken by complete losers, because it's an abdication of your personal identity for a collective identity, which is decried by the entire society. The only people who take that step are people with nothing to lose.
Why don't you tell us all about your fabulous life, Kyle?
Why don't you talk about your fabulous life?
I want to hear about your townhouse. I want to hear about that hot babe you're banging.
Let's talk about your fabulous life. Let's talk about your fabulous life. Let's talk about how you had to. Okay, Actually, I don't even want to talk about this because this is Luke's show. This is Luke's show, and basically you're inviting such a tax. You
called me a loser.
You're in such a glass house.
You called me a loser. Okay, I'm a loser.
I don't want to call you a loser.
Why don't you did? You did.
I don't want to directly.
You did. Why don't you tell us about your fabulous life, Kyle?
This is a little too personal. Love and inclusion.
No, let it go. Let it go. Let it fight. Let it go on.
Sorry, more blood. Go, Kyle. Blood. You had some blood.
Kyle, your fabulous life.
Fabulous life. No fabulous life? Okay.
No, I'm not going to talk about my fabulous fucking life. I'm happy to talk about Kevin's fabulous life if you want.
Well, we could do that too.
Language. Shut up.
No, I'm just saying it's Luke's show. I'm like, I love the energy, Kyle. I mean, I like watching your stuff, man. Like, you got energy. I mean, you're the pole that we're kind of.
I ignored Kevin, by the way. I'm not talking to Kevin anymore tonight. Maybe that's the end of my participation on the show for tonight. If Luke wants me to go, I'll go. But I'm not going to talk to Kevin anymore. He's been absolutely outrageous, and he repeatedly uses these personal jabs, and then refuses to address my points, and then gets all pissy. Like a little, okay, I'm not even gonna say it, but he gets real fucking pissy when I actually give him back the medicine that he dishes out. That's what happens. Okay, I've ignored him. I'm not gonna address him anymore tonight. If I have to leave the show, then for tonight, then I'll leave the show for tonight. But I'm not gonna address him anymore. I don't think that he's worth addressing at the moment.
So Kyle, let me ask you, what do you think about the fact that that CEOs have a very high rate of being sociopaths?
I think that the people who get to the very tippy top of the hierarchy,
the elite of the elites.
Yeah, no, not the elites, but the people who become CEOs, like literally leaders, like 1 in 1,000 leadership positions within elite circles. You kind of have to have a convergence of traits there. So you kind of have to have it all. You have to have an incredible drive to actually succeed. So that includes sociopathy. Yeah.
Right.
But the elites is much broader than that. Go ahead.
Well, I would say that in a world where we see an increasing concentration of wealth and power in these sort of large pyramid corporate structures, I mean, we're basically being led around by a social organization that rewards sociopathy.
Was possibly going to be heading out. KMG, you had some final thoughts potentially.
No, my final thoughts were on capitalism.
Yeah.
Okay. That what we talk about, as capitalism now, dates from the Industrial Revolution, which is really not that long ago. Okay. The use of the term in its present form is less than 2 centuries old. Now you can talk about capitalism deriving from the introduction of double entry bookkeeping, okay, in the Middle Ages. In any event, capitalism is fairly new on the human scene. And Kyle argues as if it is intrinsic to humanity, which clearly it is not. It is not intrinsic to virtue, because if it were, then there would have been no means for people to be virtuous before the introduction of capitalism. I'll just repeat what I said, that there is a middle ground between capitalism and socialism, or there is a school of thought which rejects both of those. And I think that capitalism is a tool which can be useful, but there has been a monstrous deformation of it. And again, this conflation of wealth with virtue, the capitalists or their supporters had better cut this out quickly. Because they might find themselves losing their heads. That these working class people, when they hear this kind of talk, when they see rich people pretending to be poor people with their ripped jeans, when they see the increasing ostentation of rich people in an era when one increasingly needs political or family connections in order to get a decent job. If we want to preserve the useful parts of capitalism, then it is incumbent upon us to come down hard on its pretensions and on the deformations. Because, I said you want to look out for Ocasio-Cortez, because the speed with which she has become one of the most admired people in America tells me that capitalism in its current form is in very serious trouble.